a little sampling, a little taste, a little niblet of what hath Darwin wrought. Take it away, Todd.
They all agree ideas have consequences, but what has been the consequence of Darwinian evolution? We decided to dig to the bottom of that, and so we assembled some of the world's finest thinkers to answer the question, what hath Darwin wrought? We decided to jump right into the deep end to talk to an expert named Dr. David Berlinski to ask his opinion, what hath Darwin wrought? Did Darwinian evolution indeed influence the ideas and the atrocities that we saw in Nazi Germany?
Anytime one wants to come to Hitler, the Nazis, the ideology of the Nazis, and say, where does this stuff arise? Where does it come from? What gave these people these ideas? That's already crossing into a forbidden zone. Nobody really wants to talk about it, unless it can be discussed in terms that are completely inoffensive, innocuous, and uninteresting. Anti-Semitism, it has something to do with Martin Luther, end of discussion. Or it goes back to Roman times. But if one wants to say far more suggestively, look, the Nazis may have been fairly primitive in their thinking. I think that's true. These were not profound or sophisticated intellects. Not at all. But they weren't reading the Gospels when they formulated Nazi ideology. And if they weren't reading the Gospels, just where did they take their ideas from? And one place that is obvious for anyone who reads the German sources, who knows that whole milieu in Germany, is that they were profoundly influenced by events taking place 50, 60, 70 years ago in England, namely the publication of Charles Darwin, The Origin of the Species. This does not mean, of course, it does not mean that Darwin was a member of the SS or that Hitler had Origin of the Species at his bedside table. It could well be that Hitler's ignorance of the details of evolutionary biology was profound. When we talk about the association between Darwinian evolution, the idea of evolution, and the development of Nazi and communist ideologies, we don't have a direct connection in mind. We have necessary but not necessarily sufficient conditions. For example, I would say that without the revolution in thought of the mid-19th century, the development of Nazi ideology would have been extremely difficult. It would have seemed surpassingly strange, even to the Nazis. Because one thing they prided themselves on, you must always remember this, was the immersion of Nazi culture in a scientific culture. They thought they were being exceptionally rigorous, exceptionally rational. They thought they were following the laws of nature, and they thought of themselves that they had the courage to follow these consequences no matter where they would lead. And if they happened to lead to genocide, well, that's just the nature of logical inevitability. To a man, they would say, we're doing difficult but manful work. We're following what science indicates. We're following the laws of nature. Of course, there was lots of other stuff going on, a very vigorous form of paganism, that's for sure, a kind of bizarre worship, a cult, all of that's true. But nonetheless, the ideology, which was widely shared, and don't forget, at least 5% of the German population belonged to the Nazi Party, and the influence of Nazi ideology was widespread. These ideas were part of the revolution, or the dissonance, if you will, that Darwin introduced into thought in the mid-19th century. Darwin, in The Origin of Species in 1859, argued for two theses. One, a demotion of human beings from their previous Christian pedestal. Human beings were not separate from the animal kingdom. They were continuous with, quantitatively different, but not qualitatively different from anything that happens to slither or crawl or walk across the surface of the earth. So there was this profound continuity with the rest of the animal kingdom. And in the second place, Darwin placed at the forefront of his own research the idea of competition between species, which in the hands of the Nazis was transmutated into competition between races. This is how they thought, that Germany and the Aryan race is involved in a competition to the death with other races. The very end of his life, April 1944, an interesting moment in intellectual history. Hitler was trying to summarize the experiences through which he lived. And of course, it was an immense amount of boastfulness and self-justification. But then in one of those remarkable moments, and you have to understand this from Hitler's perspective, he said, the struggle has been awarded to the stronger races of the East.